Okie dokie. Hi, all. My name is Jari. I'm a serial entrepreneur, blockchain, web, crypto enthusiast, turned researcher. Also from University of Turku in Finland. Besides being a researcher and having been an entrepreneur for ages, software entrepreneur, my software entrepreneurial career started back really long time ago when VIC-20s and Commodore 64s were pretty cool, and ever since turning into the early 90s, I really went all in on open source. So I'm really an open source software enthusiast as well. The first version of Linux kernel was compiled at the close to our then startup's headquarters in Helsinki, about maybe 500 meters. So it's really sort of a breathing open source every day. I'm also a working group lead on International Panel of Social Progress, which is a panel consisting of 300 and so social scientists focusing on what's good for our society in the future. I'm going to skip this and go into a little bit of the sort of the philosophical side first. So when we're doing research, we kind of like need to understand what's our take on the world. Are we trying to create an objective truth? Do we leave a space for the subjective? Are we very positivist? Are we dogmatic? Are we interpretivist? And so on. And what's our take on time? Is it linear or is it hermeneutic? And then, of course, what level are we looking at? Are we looking at the micro level, the individual? Are we looking at the macro level, let's say the DAO as an organization? Or are we looking at meso, which is kind of like the society at whole? Since I'm doing my PhD on business, I look at sort of also at the institutional theory side, and we can break like a DAO into 4 different layers. I'm going to go too deep into this, but you can see that some of the functions of it are really at the norms level. How do people behave in DAOs, and how people outside of the DAO sphere, how do they experience somebody in the DAO sphere? There's the regulatory space, there's the, then what's really of interest to us, and in this presentation, the DAO governance. What are the governance structures, how are they actually organized? And then of course, the tokenomics, and other resource allocation mechanisms. Our specific project is interested in looking at DAOs that are supporting sustainable development goals of the United Nations. When we looked at about 1,600 blockchain projects, we found that no poverty was a very kind of on the front stage. Financial inclusion in general, very high on top of the mind space. There are 17 goals. We categorize these DAOs into these SDGs. And one of the things that how we wanted to approach this is looking at, all right, what's the mission statement of the DAO? What are they promising to the world? And one of the things, also the 4 things that came through is that, of course, blockchain in itself promises transparency and efficiency. Then when you organize it as a community, you organize it as an open source project, you do have a community as a keyword. And then, of course, sustainability. It's kind of like really plain and simple. And we employ a critical lens, and what that means is that we're not just trying to look at things from sort of a purely dogmatic perspective and things like, trying to eat and look at what are the DAOs saying on their websites or in the official white papers, but we actually want to go and deep dive into their sort of discussion forums, the living and breathing animal of the DAO, to figure out, or what are they actually doing, and are they actually really living up to their promise. So we employed an AI algorithms to basically do a critical microhistorical analysis. The work started with a bit of a thick history, meaning we interviewed founders of certain DAOs to find out what are the key aspects of the transformative moments. And what is microhistory then? Most of us probably know what the Dune is. I'm not sure how many of you have read the Dune, the book, but almost each chapter begins with a short introduction by Princess Irulan. And that's a microhistory. It contextualizes the rest of the chapter into what's going to be said. So microhistory, when we did the interviews, lot of the DAOs go through liquidity crisis, budget disagreements. They try to figure out how do we do referenda, how do we do community votes, and then from this sort of a very radical decentralization where all flowers are allowed to flourish, they all of a sudden realize we need some structural governance, including conflict resolution. So how do we try to derive an objective truth out of this very subjective experiences by employing a number of algorithms, sentence transformers, and then some additional helpful algorithms to help us create keywords out of these raw data that comes from the forum discussions, and then we visualize once we have turned them into JSONs to create sort of a timelines and links in between protocol proposals, who's for, who's against, and so on. And why critical AI then? If we use and employ sort of a standard non-critical AI, we would end up being sort of led into unconsciously biased, non-original thought that's probabilistic. So a sort of a regular AI couldn't answer questions like why was this decision made unless the person prompting would have that critical bias himself, or who were the winners or losers of a certain proposal. And the findings then, when we look at the actual forum discussion information, we look at the extracted data that we had, it reveals both positives and negatives. Being critical doesn't mean that it's only negative. It just means that we deconstruct stuff to sort of atoms, and then we reconstruct and try to understand the phenomena. So when we're navigating, a lot of these DAOs are actually navigating, and successfully so, very complex issues like code merging, introducing new features, functionalities into the protocol. And what we also found is that they actually align pretty well with the mission statements that they have. We also found out that there are significant efforts to improve the governance processes, and they're trying to incorporate community feedback. On the negative side, budget allocation processes are very opaque. There's very little processes to handle conflicts of interest. There's significant power consolidation, whales, delegated votes, and all that sort of things, and quite a number of funding inequities as well. So as a summary, what we see is that formalization of a DAO actually increases centralization. It's of course driven by the need to obey regulatory rules, and also when most of these DAOs are kind of coming out of a chaos and try to bring structure to create value, they need to formalize in a way. The power imbalances, however, you have your token whales, validators, delegations, multisigs. They are visible in the discussion forums, and where you can kind of say that as a newcomer to any ecosystem or DAO ecosystem, it's very, very difficult to actually get your voice heard. There's insiders, people who hold a lot of merit-based power. They are founders of these DAOs, or potentially representing a lab organization or the foundation or any such sort of a legal entity that has been developed to serve the DAO. And unfortunately, we saw also quite a bit of double tipping. So basically, same project, same people getting money from several proposals, kind of like not really ethical. So it's kind of lame to say this, but the space needs improvements, and so as we don't recreate the traditional power structures whereby the control is held by a very small group of individuals, kind of like a DAO oligarchy at play, right? So we don't want that. So we need to figure out how to fight against that, and maybe we can employ AI to do that. So that's it. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jari, for your presentations. I think we have time for one question. If anybody has anything they'd like to inquire about. No, I have some questions, but wary of time, we're going to continue with the next presentation. Lovely. One more time, Jari, thank you very much.